In a bustling town in Jiangnan, Zhang Qiang's family was the envy of everyone. Zhang Qiang was a successful restaurant owner running a high-end Chinese restaurant renowned for its exquisite dishes and thoughtful service. His restaurant was always packed, and he was well respected in the industry for his sharp business acumen and efficient management style. His wife, Li Yuan, was an elegant and graceful woman. She always dressed impeccably, and her gentle and poised manner made her the center of attention at social events. Whether helping out at the restaurant or attending community activities, Li Yuan was admired by everyone. Her smile, warm and inviting, made her a beloved figure in the neighborhood, and she was often praised as the perfect wife and mother. Zhang Qiang's stepdaughter, Xiao Ran, was a bright and beautiful college student. Not only was she charming in appearance, but she was also an outgoing and kind-hearted person, often helping out at the restaurant during her free time. Her presence was a topic of admiration among regular customers, and many would request her service. Xiao Ran's smart and considerate nature filled Zhang Qiang with pride, and Li Yuan showered her with affection. This family of three seemed like the perfect combination in the eyes of others. Neighbors would often say, "Boss Zhang truly has it all, success in his career and happiness at home. Li Yuan and Xiao Ran are so lucky." Whenever they went out, they attracted envious glances from those around them. However, beneath the polished exterior, there were hidden cracks. Zhang Qiang spent almost all of his time focused on his business, rarely being home to spend time with his family. Li Yuan, left alone in an empty house, gradually began to feel the weight of her loneliness. Meanwhile, Xiao Ran's relationship with her stepmother seemed unusually close, at times giving off a subtle, uneasy feeling. Was this seemingly perfect family truly as flawless as it appeared? Stay tuned, as the developments ahead are more unexpected than you might think. If you like the story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel to catch the next part. Zhang Qiang had recently started feeling that something was wrong at home. At first it was just a fleeting feeling, but a chance discovery gradually amplified his unease. It was an ordinary afternoon. After wrapping up work at the restaurant, Zhang Qiang returned home early, hoping to surprise Li Yuan. As he pushed the door open, the house was unusually quiet. He changed his shoes and was about to head into the living room when he heard a soft conversation coming from the bedroom. "Don't you worry about getting caught?" It was Xiao Ran's voice, soft with a hint of amusement. "As long as you're careful, he won't know," came Li Yuan's voice. With a touch of flirtation and hesitation, Zhang Qiang froze. His heart sank as the words echoed in his mind. He quickly stepped back, forcing himself to stay calm, but the conversation kept replaying in his head. What were they hiding from him? A few days later, while organizing his study, Zhang Qiang accidentally came across an old phone that seemed to have been forgotten by Li Yuan. Initially intending to put it back, his curiosity got the better of him, and he opened the phone. On the screen was a series of unsaved text messages, one of which read, "I'll text you after work tonight. I miss you too." The sender was Xiao Ran. Zhang Qiang's hand trembled, almost dropping the phone. His heart raced, and his mind was flooded with countless possibilities, each one more unsettling than the last. He couldn't believe it, but the message was undeniable. Instead of confronting them immediately, he chose to observe quietly. From that day on, Zhang Qiang became more aware of every move Li Yuan and Xiao Ran made. He noticed that their interactions were more intimate than what was typical for a mother and daughter. Li Yuan often looked at Xiao Ran with deep affection, and Xiao Ran displayed a particular kind of dependence on Li Yuan. When they were alone together, their whispers and laughter seemed to hide something secret. Zhang Qiang, however, remained calm and continued his investigation in the shadows. One day, while Li Yuan was in the bathroom, he seized the opportunity to check her phone, finding even more flirtatious messages. He casually asked Xiao Ran about her plans, but she would always avoid answering his questions directly. These small clues slowly pieced together a terrifying truth, one that Zhang Qiang could not accept. Yet Zhang Qiang held back his anger. He knew that the time to confront them had not come. He reminded himself that he needed more solid evidence before he could face the truth. So he chose to wait, like a hunter, patiently biding his time, ready to expose the hidden secret when the moment was right. It was a quiet evening. Li Yuan was busy preparing dinner in the kitchen, while Xiaoran sat on the couch in the living room, reading a book. The air was filled with the aroma of home-cooked food. However, this calmness was merely the calm before the storm. Zhang Qiang slowly entered the living room holding a folder in his hand. His face was stern and his eyes cold. Xiaoran sensed something unusual and put down her book, looking up with unease. "Dad, is there something wrong?" she asked cautiously. Zhang Qiang didn't answer. Instead, he walked over to the coffee table and placed the folder down heavily. Screenshots from a phone, several handwritten letters, and a copy of a personal journal scattered across the table. Li Yuan, hearing the noise, walked over and went pale when she saw the familiar contents. "Are you still planning to hide it?" Zhang Qiang's voice was low but forceful, like a dam that was about to break. His gaze swept over his wife, then fixed on Xiaoran's face. "Do these seem like enough to explain your relationship?" Xiaoran froze, as if her ability to speak had been taken away. Li Yuan tried to speak, but her voice trembled. "Qiang, listen to me. It's not what you think." Before she could finish, Zhang Qiang coldly interrupted her. "Not what I think? These messages, these words, am I still misunderstanding?" The air in the room suddenly became thick, as if it were a glass about to shatter. Li Yuan took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. She slowly sat down and said in a low voice, "Qiang, I've been so lonely. You're always busy with the restaurant. I've been alone." Her words were filled with pleading, trying to explain her actions, but they sounded so powerless in Zhang Qiang's ears. "Lonely? So you chose betrayal? Chose her?" Zhang Qiang pointed at Xiaoran, his voice filled with disbelief and anger. His tone grew louder as he searched for an outlet for the anger that had been building up. "Do you even realize what this means to me? What it means for our family?" It was then that Xiaoran spoke, her voice trembling. "Dad, I didn't mean for this to happen. I never intended for things to go this far." "Shut up!" Zhang Qiang slammed his hand on the coffee table, his voice deafening. Xiaoran flinched, taking a step back, her eyes starting to redden. Anger, shame, and despair spread throughout the room. Zhang Qiang stared coldly at Li Yuan, as if waiting for a final explanation, but Li Yuan merely lowered her head, silent tears streaming down her face. "Nothing more to say, is there?" Zhang Qiang finally sneered and stood up. His eyes were empty and cold, as though he had lost all hope in this family. "From today our family no longer exists." After saying this, he turned and left, leaving behind a room full of silence and broken emotions. Li Yuan collapsed onto the sofa, while Xiaoran stood helplessly beside her. They both watched Zhang Qiang walk away, powerless to stop him, knowing that the rift in their family could no longer be repaired. Zhang Qiang's transformation began that evening. The sharp, energetic man he once was gradually turned silent and withdrawn. He started drinking frequently, often stumbling home drunk. Every time he walked through the door in a haze, Li Yuan and Xiaoran exchanged anxious glances, trying to avoid his gaze. The atmosphere at home grew stifling, making it hard to breathe. Zhang Qiang no longer initiated conversations, and when his eyes landed on Li Yuan and Xiaoran, they were filled with hostility, cold and piercing. Li Yuan tried several times to approach him, hoping to break the tension, but each time he would simply grunt and walk away. Xiaoran, too, tried to keep her distance, barely daring to stay in his presence for longer than necessary. This suffocating silence and tension lasted for weeks until that one fateful night, when everything spiraled out of control. It was a hot summer night, and Zhang Qiang returned home drunk again. His steps were staggered, holding a half-finished beer bottle, his face flushed. Li Yuan was in the kitchen, preparing a simple dinner, while Xiaoran sat at the dining table, silently scrolling through her phone. The moment Zhang Qiang entered, the air thickened with tension. He walked straight to the table and sat down heavily, glaring at Li Yuan's back. "Is the dinner ready yet? It's so late, and you still can't get it done?" His voice was hoarse, laced with provocation. Li Yuan paused, then softly replied, "It's almost ready. Just wait a moment." "Wait?" Zhang Qiang sneered, slamming the beer bottle down on the table, causing the liquid to splash. "You want me to wait? You have the nerve to ask me to wait?" His tone was dripping with contempt. Xiaoran trembled slightly, setting her phone down. "Dad, let's just sit down and talk. There's no need to do this," she said, her voice filled with unease. "Talk? What do you think you have to talk about with me?" Zhang Qiang's voice suddenly rose. He got up from the table and walked toward Xiaoran, his anger boiling over. "Do you think I don't know? You've destroyed this family." Li Yuan sensed that things were about to escalate and hurried to stand in front of Xiaoran, shielding her. "Qiang, please don't do this. We can talk about it." But Zhang Qiang was already beyond reason. He stormed into the kitchen, grabbed a sharp kitchen knife, and his eyes became wild with rage. "You don't deserve to speak to me. Tonight, you'll understand the consequences of betrayal." His words were venomous. Xiaoran screamed, trying to pull Li Yuan away, but Li Yuan stood firm, hands stretched wide to block Zhang Qiang's path. "Qiang, stop! She's still your daughter," she pleaded, but her voice was drowned by his fury. Without warning, Zhang Qiang lunged forward, slashing with the knife. His movement, clumsy from the alcohol, was still forceful and unpredictable. The knife struck Li Yuan's abdomen, and she fell to the floor, gasping in pain. "Mom!" Xiaoran screamed, throwing herself down beside Li Yuan, trying to stop the bleeding. Blood spread quickly, staining Li Yuan's clothes. "Stay with me! Don't close your eyes!" Xiaoran begged, her voice frantic. Zhang Qiang froze, staring at the knife in his hand, as if in disbelief at what he had just done. The rage that had consumed him moments before suddenly gave way to fear. He stumbled backward, dropping the knife to the floor with a sharp clatter. "Mom! Mom!" Xiaoran shouted, dialing 911 with trembling hands. Her voice was urgent, nearly breaking. "Please, help! She's bleeding too much!" The sirens wailed in the distance, but it was too late. By the time the paramedics arrived, Li Yuan had already passed away. Zhang Qiang stood in stunned silence, his eyes wide with horror as he watched his wife being carried away. There was no resistance as the police handcuffed him, his body slack and lifeless. He seemed like a man who had lost his soul, incapable of grasping the irreversible horror he had unleashed. That night the family was irreparably shattered. What remained was only endless pain and regret. The day after the incident, Zhang Qiang was formally detained by the police on charges of murder. The police conducted searches at his restaurant and home, attempting to piece together the full details of the case. They found text messages between Li Yuan and Xiaoran, which not only contained ordinary conversations but also had secretive and suggestive content. Even more troubling were a few unsent letters which detailed Li Yuan's disappointment in her marriage to Zhang Qiang and hinted at her special feelings for Xiaoran. The police also interviewed restaurant employees. Several longtime employees mentioned that Li Yuan and Xiaoran were often seen together at the restaurant, displaying overly intimate behavior. Some mentioned that they would whisper to each other in the kitchen, and the way they touched each other seemed to cross the usual boundaries for a mother and daughter. However, most employees had not paid much attention, assuming it was just a sign of a close stepmother-stepdaughter relationship. These testimonies further uncovered the secret that lay beneath the seemingly perfect family facade. The case quickly garnered widespread attention. On the day of the trial, the courtroom was packed, with the media flocking in. The prosecution charged Zhang Qiang with murder due to his uncontrollable emotions, calling for the harshest punishment. The prosecutor presented Jiang Qiang's history of alcoholism, controlling tendencies, and his eventual violent actions, arguing that his actions directly led to Li Yuan's death. The defense team, however, tried to argue for Jiang Qiang by emphasizing his excessive drinking that night and the immense emotional pressure he had been under, claiming that the murder was a result of impulse rather than premeditation. They called for a reduced charge of manslaughter due to emotional breakdown and presented psychological evaluation reports to show that Jiang Qiang had long been suffering from mental strain due to marital issues. Xiao Ran, the key witness, took the stand on the third day of the trial. Her presence caused a brief silence in the courtroom. Xiao Ran appeared exhausted and sorrowful, her eyes swollen and red, her voice trembling as she recalled that fateful night. She described Jiang Qiang's rage in a drunken state, Li Yuan's attempt to protect her, and the scene of her mother collapsing with blood pouring from her body. Her testimony was raw and gripping, bringing many in the courtroom to tears, and even Jiang Qiang lowered his head, his face showing a trace of regret. As the trial progressed, the case became a hot topic of public discussion. Some sympathized with Jiang Qiang, believing that he was provoked by the special relationship between his wife and stepdaughter and was a victim himself. Others criticized his violent actions as unforgivable. The media interpreted the family tragedy from various angles, calling it the collapse of a perfect family. On social media, there was widespread speculation and condemnation regarding the relationship between Li Yuan and Xiao Ran, with many criticizing the public's prying eyes, which prevented the victims from finding peace. Ultimately, the case became a heart-wrenching tragedy that made everyone involved rethink: could the secrets and conflicts within a family be resolved in such an extreme way? Behind this tragedy, what were the consequences of each person's choices? After a lengthy trial and deliberation, Jiang Qiang was ultimately convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to 25 years in prison. This verdict did not bring true relief to anyone, especially to Xiao Ran. Although she knew her father's actions were unforgivable, at the moment the sentence was announced, she felt an indescribable emptiness. The death of Li Yuan and Jiang Qiang's imprisonment ruthlessly took away everything she once believed she had. Xiao Ran stood outside the courtroom, her face expressionless. She had lost both of her parents. Li Yuan's death left her deeply grieving, and Jiang Qiang's conviction made her feel like a stranger to him. The once intact family was now completely shattered, leaving only her to bear the endless pain and loneliness. She knew that no matter what, this family tragedy had irrevocably changed her. In the face of this anguish, Xiao Ran decided to leave the city full of memories behind. She packed her things and chose to move to a distant place to start anew. There she hoped to find a sliver of hope, away from the shadows of the past and the sorrow that haunted every corner of her old life. She longed for a fresh start, free from the suffocating weight of her tragic history. After Xiao Ran left, the old home never returned to its former tranquility. Jiang Qiang spent his long days in prison, while Xiao Ran tried to rebuild her life in solitude. She understood that the tragedy couldn't be reversed, nor could it be repaired. Her relationship with her father could never be restored, and Li Yuan's death would forever remain a painful scar in her heart. This family's betrayal and secrets profoundly affected each person involved. Whether it was Jiang Qiang's fury and remorse or Xiao Ran's helplessness and loneliness, it served as a warning to everyone. This tragedy shows that once emotional rifts appear, they are hard to heal. Communication and understanding are the only bridges to prevent such calamities. The warmth and support of a family are often what we need most in times of difficulty. But if we fail to truly understand one another's pain and needs, the family can become the deepest wound. This tragedy reminds us that behind any seemingly perfect family, there may be countless untold secrets. Every individual's choice affects the future of the entire family. We must always be vigilant, respecting and cherishing those we love, ensuring that emotional cracks do not become irreparable disasters.